Hey guys, and welcome back to Cultured Boys, a show where two guys just want to have a chat. As always, I'm joined by Pepe, and this week we're going a little across the seas from Japan. We're going to be talking about Manwha. How you doing, Pepe?
I'm very well, Nathan. I'm very well. Manwha is something that I actually haven't really read before, so I'm like I've read a couple different series in preparation for this episode, and yeah, I'm good to jump into talking about this sort of different media that we're intaking.
Yeah. So it does need to be said, like Pepe, I also have very little experience with Manhwa. This time round, we're talking about Manhwa spelled Manwha.
Mhm.
I understand that spelt differently is Chinese manhwa, so like
Oh,
Chinese comics, whereas this manhwa is like I think specifically used for Korean comics.
interesting. Okay, fair. Have you read any Chinese manhwa before, Nathan?
No, I like the entire like sort of genre of manhwa in general,
Yeah,
Korean, Chinese. Like I have very little experience about.
yeah.
I too have only read, even though it's like technically two manhwas,
Hmm.
it's from the same series,
Okay.
so it's it's kind of like weird, but we've read different series though.
Yes, we have. Well, do we go over to mine first, or do you want to go for yours? What do you want to do?
I don't know, man.
Well, basically, I didn't know where to start with Manhwa. So, from a little backstory here, I guess. I basically asked Nathan, "Do you know any?" And I believe your friend sent over a whole bunch of ones that he thought you'd like, right?
Yeah, last time I hung out with this friend, and you know who you are if you're listening. They gave me a list and said to me, Nate, next time we meet, I want you to have read all of these. I unfortunately will disappoint you, friend. I haven't. But I kept the list. Just
And now I have the list.
yeah. Conveniently, I kept the list and it came in handy because Pepe hadn't read any manhwa. And to be honest, if I had to come up with someone off the top of my head, I wouldn't even know where to look. Again,
Mhm.
it's something we have very little experience with,
Mm.
despite both of us reading a lot of like manga and stuff.
Yeah, I guess. Well, that's the thing. I've only really like how I got into manga was via Jump comics, and it was like kind of like based off like TV shows I watched as a kid. So it's all very like very mainstream stuff for both Japan and the West, I guess, as well. Like yeah, manhwa never really like. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like we wouldn't find manhwa like books in like Waterstones, for example, here, which is why I got a lot of my manga as a teenager.
No,
Like,
I don't think so.
so yeah. But anyway, manhwa. So, I read two series. From the list, I literally had to go off titles alone. I didn't know what the descriptions were for them, so I literally went off titles alone. There's a whole bunch of them. There's probably a choice of 10, and the first one I went for was a series called Peerless Dad, and I don't know what I expected from it, right? Because I read Peerless Dad and I thought that sounds like something funny, and that sounds like something I'd like. It sounds like a comedy. I didn't take into account that this is a series, a list that is made for you, technically, Nathan. So, reading Peerless Dad, it is not a comedy. It's far from it. Peerless Dad kind of follows the story of No Gajang. I hope I
Okay.
pronounced that right. But it's basically he is basically raised in a village where his father is basically a very like he's man the house. It's like sort of time setting is probably I want to probably feudal kind of area, I'd say. Like if
Okay.
I'm not exactly clued up on my Korean history either, so please I apologize if I got that wrong. But yeah, so feudal times where like the like father provides for the family, provides for the kids, and basically Noah's backstory is that his father was always like a man, always like took on like shouldered a lot of the work, like powered through. Like he was raised in a village of men that would always like stay by their families, do right by their families.
So the old like traditions and old stereotypes, like
100%, basically. And basically, he grows into a man that basically does that as well. He wants to provide for his family, and he takes his father's lead as an example, and he basically tries to be that man. And he sort of grows up, and falls in love, and then he has three kids, but unfortunately his wife doesn't make it through the birth, and it's a
Oh,
lot of
okay.
emotional stuff comes through. Yeah, so he's left to raise three kids by himself. So she gives birth to triplets, and yeah, that's basically where I got up to with it. Bear in mind, I only read two chapters of this one, by the way, and this is my first time. This is my first ever manhwa that I read. This is the first ever manhwa that I read, and my first impressions is that as the classic manga reader, like I only read manga, and it really, I don't know, reading it online is an interesting read. I don't know how you found manhwa to be, Nathan. Like as a like for someone that reads manga a lot, what is your transition to manhwa like?
Um, I only found it a little confusing at times,
Mm.
but that's because whilst it's with essentially manga, whatever you label it as, we're talking
Mm-hmm.
about comics.
Yeah.
It's just the comic that I choose to read the most is Japanese, so you typically read from right to left.
Yeah.
Um, and it took me a bit because I was reading the two manhwa I read alongside a bunch of manga, so like I would get confused all the time, and I would read out of order because I'm reading from right to left instead of left to right, like I normally would if it was English.
Okay, I just realized that that is actually a thing. And I've read two series, one of two chapters, another one I've probably got 16 chapters into. And I just been reading it like manga.
Well, that's the thing.
I didn't
Like
even realize that.
I'm not sure. Like you don't often realize it, right?
Hmm.
Until it gets to specific parts where there's maybe multiple characters and
Hmm.
there's lots of speech bubbles, and then all of a sudden you realize, hang on a second, that doesn't make grammatical sense.
Yeah.
Like none of this makes sense. Like that's not how a normal human talks. And then you read it the other way, left to
Hmm.
right, and then oh right, so much more makes sense now. Like I'm
Yeah.
an idiot.
I kind of get what you mean. Like I think like it's the same way when I read comic books, for example. If I had to like pick up a comic and try and flick through it or something, I realize, hold on a second, this isn't the way I'm so used to
Yeah.
reading manga. I'm like, oh shit, it's not that way. Read it normal way. Read it like the way that you were brought up with.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's like because we've been reading manga for so long, like your brain is just trained to do it the other way
Yeah.
because you see a set of panels and then you're just like, oh, well, yeah, brain knows what that is, and it's like, oh wait, no, it's not.
Mm. Basically, my the transition to manga is like my thing that I notice most of it as a manga reader is that it's a very different style.
Yeah,
So like it's a longer page is one of the things, and they put I think that what that gives you with the longer page is like you get to show off a bit more art, and like the panels actually are a bit more dynamic in that sense. I don't know
that
if it.
is one thing that I would definitely say is that the art in manhwa is way more elaborate
Mm,
generally.
yeah.
Obviously, there's outliers and stuff with everything. There's always exceptions to the rules, but a lot of manhwa, at least the ones I've seen covers and things of, or maybe like just scrolling the internet, you see the odd like panel or something.
Mm.
Manhwa is really, really elaborate with the art, and the art is normally fantastic. Like,
Mhm.
if you compare it to some of the current manga and stuff, they are leaps and bounds ahead. Like, it feels like manga's slacking in that sense.
I mean, it's two very different styles in how you look at it, really. Because I think manga is very much compact in the way that it's displayed, whereas manhwa kind of like it has a lot more spacing in it with that. Although the panels are very detailed, and you still get a decent amount of story. Like both of them are great forms of media to get a story from, however, very different at the same time. Um, and I do very much appreciate how manhwa is displayed in the fact that like you can have like certain parts of that page dedicated to just speech, and then certain parts of it dedicated to your drawings or whatever. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's a crossover, like that sort of thing. I think the transition is fine. I didn't have a problem transitioning over to it. At the end
I
of the day,
mean,
it's
to be
reading
honest,
comics. You don't. It's not
yeah,
really
I
a
was gonna say it's
transition.
not that hard technically. It's
No, no,
literally
no.
just that one small detail. If you're like us, you read a lot of manga, then you will have to get used to reading it the other way from
Mm,
left to right instead of right to left. But besides that, there's not that much of a transition. I think the next hardest thing is that the stories are a little more drawn out as well, because
Hundred
the
percent.
way I equate the stories of a manhwa is like it's almost like you're reading a short novel that's been like drawn into a comic.
Yeah.
Like somebody has spent the time to write a proper story, and then like somebody else has put the time in to illustrate it.
Mm-hmm.
But the stories just feel a little more drawn out. I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
say like longer or something, like I don't want to misinterpret
Yeah.
or put out the wrong message about
Mm-hmm.
what it's like.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing that I found with Peerless Dad is that, like, realistically, what I read in the first chapter kind of made me want to continue on to the second one because it is basically a continuation of his story. And basically, I found that the first two chapters are basically what would be in a manga, the first chapter. So,
Yeah.
like, basically, it feels like the prologue to his story and how, like, basically it's a setup. And yeah, as you said, like, the pacing for that is, I'll get into more of the pacing sort of stuff with my next series in, like, further down the line. The thing is with Peerless Dad is that it isn't really my kind of thing. It is very much like a martial artsy kind of manga as well. So it's a guy that,
Would explain why
yeah,
it was
not
on a recommendation list for me.
it's yeah, it's I wouldn't even say martial arts to be fair, because right now where I've seen, it feels like it's a lot of it's fighting, don't get me wrong, and it's gonna be swords, spears, all that kind of thing.
Okay.
But to me, like I don't know, going in like obviously I set my expectations. I'm thinking, oh, Peerless Dad, that's gonna be a funny manga. And that it was a serious one, and for me, it just didn't really go. But that's my personal style at the end of the day. Yeah, Peerless Dad is it's an okay read. I reckon you'd really like it, Nathan. I think if anyone was gonna pick this up, I think it'd be your kind of vibe.
Again, it makes sense why my friend recommended it to me. I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
that list was compiled based off of a few prerequisites. I'm
Mm-hmm.
pretty sure he asked me what my preferences are, and I was like, like heavy on combat, not too heavy on story, like
Mm-hmm.
simple reading because
Yeah.
I'm monkey brain and I just want to see fights.
Yeah, I reckon it's your kind of vibe, Nathan. Yeah. But what is the manhwa you've read, Nathan? You said it was like basically two from. Is it the same series?
It
Basically.
basically is. So the manhwa I've read is firstly the first part is called The Breaker, and then its continuation series, The Breaker New Waves. There is a third part to that, and it kind of changed the series, but I never actually finished New Waves, so that's why I never got onto the third part.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but much like we just discussed, The Breaker is all about martial arts and fighting. So that's why I
uh-huh.
read it. It was actually
Yeah.
recommended to me by someone I worked with a long, long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
They were really into reading manhwa and manga and stuff, and we talked quite a lot. And they recommended this series to me. It's basically about a school kid called Shiwon Yi,
Mm-hmm.
and he is your typical kind of school kid. He's normal. He gets bullied, and it just so happens that this new teacher arrives and sees him getting bullied, but instead of helping him, basically calls him a wuss for not fighting back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then basically finds out that turns out this substitute English teacher is actually a martial artist. And he basically, it's bad to say, but he somehow gets recordings or something that he shouldn't have been able to find, and he blackmails the guy into training him.
Okay. What kind of recordings?
I can't remember, if I'm honest.
Okay.
I read this
Okay? Yeah.
like over a decade ago,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
all I remember is he got some sort of recording, right,
Mm-hmm.
and blackmailed the guy, Chun Woo,
Mm-hmm.
into training him. But it turns out that this guy Chun Woo Han he'd learned some like forbidden martial art or something, and he's actually like famous in the world of martial arts. In the series, they call that whole world like Murim. So
Mm-hmm.
in the world of Murim, this guy Chun Woo Han has a title, Gumun Virong. Forgive me for
Mm-hmm.
butchering that. We don't speak Korean. We're just weebs. And yeah, so like he's famous because he knows he's basically like kind of undefeated and also knows this like forbidden martial art.
Interesting.
But if I remember correctly, he also wasn't actually supposed to take on any disciples, regardless of what it was. Murim was supposed to have kept an eye on him, and he was like forbidden from spreading this art, but he did it anyway.
Okay.
And basically, that's just the first part. Like the breaker new waves. I can't remember why, but basically, the Chun Woo Han betrays his student and
Mm-hmm.
breaks what they call your key center. So it's like this fucking thing inside your body, and if your key center is broken, you can't practice martial arts. So he breaks it, and basically, Shion is just sort of left trying to recover because he wants to keep doing martial arts. He likes it.
Yeah.
And he's got to try and recover, but he also gets mixed up with some Murim stuff. Like he gets left this amulet and becomes the interim leader of a clan.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
it's like I didn't get super far into it. I might have got like a quarter of the way through the series.
Yeah.
But yeah, that so the Breaker New Waves is just Shion trying to use martial arts again whilst also dealing with this other crap that was just like left on his plate. Like
Yeah. Okay. So does the teacher basically become the antagonist of the second part?
from what I can gather, yeah, like he's off doing stuff like and probably committing a bunch of crimes against the martial arts world.
Okay, yeah.
Um
That's interesting.
like I read the synopsis for the I don't remember what it's called, but like the third part got really weird because it was about whoever is left at the end of Break New Waves, I guess. I don't know. Because it just said like the world's Murim's best martial artist meets a wizard from a fantasy world, and then I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm not. I'm not reading fucking.
It's Harry Potter.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, so Harry Potter
Yeah,
meets martial arts. I don't think so. I'm out. I'm out.
yeah. I mean, maybe it isn't like as heavy on the wizard thing as like you maybe
I have no
anticipate. That
idea,
maybe,
but
yeah. Is that so? Like, did you drop off halfway through New Waves then?
I did, but that was because it was I was just reading a lot of stuff at the time, and you know
Yeah,
when you just
yeah.
get to that point where you're like, oh, something needs to, I'm just gonna drop something, and the new waves wasn't as good as the original, The Breaker to me. Like New
Okay,
Waves
yeah.
was kind of, it just felt like it was too much storytelling and it dragged way too much
Okay.
because it wasn't even like made sense sometimes. You know, like
How often would a chapter come out?
I can't even remember. Like I think I was reading it week to week because I was reading it when it as
Okay,
it was
yeah.
coming out,
Yeah.
and it
That's a tough one with Manwha as well, because obviously what we just discussed about it being so drawn out in a certain chapter, like it's what would be a normal chapter in manga could be like between 1 and 3 chapters in a manhwa,
yeah
and waiting week to week between that can be aggravating as anything.
yeah because I
I
remember
can see
like
that.
in New Waves it was like, oh, we're gonna do this thing, and then the whole chapter is just talking about the thing, and then the next chapter is like the thing, and
Yeah,
then the third chapter is either the fallout of the thing or like the thing part two, and I was just like, I'm so done.
I can. Yeah,
And there's
I
like
understand that.
the new waves was just like character after character after character getting introduced because obviously now they're expanding the world. But then you're like, I don't know who this is. I don't remember who that
Mhm.
is. How does that guy play into this? And it was I gave up.
Yeah.
I just gave up.
Fair play, man. It happens though. It happens to most of us. Like there'll be series we all start, whether it's manga, comics, or whatever, and eventually it will just get to a point where the story just doesn't interest you, or there's a certain arc that doesn't like is not to your liking, and you do drop off.
Yeah.
It's happened to me like with loads of different series, like manga, anime, all sorts, and yeah, it does happen. No shame in that, man. No shame in
Nah, I mean,
that.
I'm not that bummed out because like I was in preparation for the episode. I did a bit more research and I looked into it, and on my anime list, like the comments for New Waves were not as complimentary as just the Breaker, like the prequel series. A lot of people did not like New Waves.
So is it the sort of thing where like has the series ended now?
Yeah, New Waves is
Completely. So
finished.
there's
Yeah,
no like the third part is that finished as well, and
I'm
that's the
not
final
too
part.
sure, but I know that is the
Okay.
final part. Like it doesn't continue on from there.
Okay, fair. Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, so like with in terms of like art style as well with Breaker, like was that like
Oh man, that was
what gripped you more? Was it art style or story, or was it like a mixture of the both?
it was a mixture of the two because like for the Breaker, the story was pretty good, even though it was
Mm-hmm.
like kind of simplistic.
Yeah.
But the art was just really cool.
Okay.
It was sort of stylized in a way I hadn't really seen in manga, and it was also like, like in some of the action, it had those really cool like action effects. Like they
Mm-hmm.
put in all this extra stuff, and it just looked really cool. So for me, again, really the thing I focus more on with Manwha is just how amazing the art is. I don't know, like I guess that's what grabbed me mostly on any manhwa, like because when we used to do the not so helpful reading from not so legitimate sources, let's say.
Yeah, yeah.
You see covers of things and it's like you'll see this one that like really stands out from like the page, and then it's probably a manhwa, to be honest.
Well, that's the thing. I remember like yeah, using those websites back in the day. Like there were they like it always had that top 10, didn't it?
Yeah,
And like One Piece, Naruto, always up there. One Piece, Naruto, Bleach, because at the time when we used those websites, like those would be the top three. That was the big three ongoing.
yeah.
And then like you'd always realize that the fourth on the list, like for me anyway, I noticed that it was a series called Noblesse, I
Oh
believe.
no, please, yeah, yeah.
Noblesse. Okay, yeah. Sorry, I butchered that. But that was a manhwa, wasn't it?
Was it?
I believe it was. Oh, well, let me just double check that
Oh,
before I
okay.
get into that.
Well, I mean, like more modern ones is like I always saw solo leveling on those kind of lists, and I never read it, but that also looked kind of cool.
Well, it's funny you should mention solo leveling,
Is
Nathan.
that the one you read? The second one?
That's the one I read. That's the series. So yes, Noblesse is a manhwa, by the way.
Oh, okay. That would explain why it looked so different and looked cool.
Yeah, so I got an anime and yeah, I was like, oh god, I can't remember when the anime came out. Like it was a fair few years ago now. But yeah, that was always one of the top ones I noticed, and yeah. But anyway, yeah, my next series that I read was Solo Leveling, and that one I actually really enjoyed. Actually, I only started it, but I only started shortly before this record. And basically, like a little rundown of the story is that. Do you know anything about Solo Leveling,
I
Nathan?
actually don't. I just see the cover
So,
all the time and was like, "Oh man, that looks
so
fun."
rundown of it is a world set like it's in of Korea and like it's all modern day. It's all modern day
Okay.
stuff, and you have these things in this world called hunters,
Okay.
and typical like hierarchy system. They go from rank E to rank S, I believe.
Okay.
This is just the intro so far. So currently, I've read 16 chapters. So anything that's past that, I apologize if it's out of date. But yeah, so the story focuses around a character called Sung Jin Woo, and he's introduced and like everyone knows him. He's like, hey, he's very very friendly with all the hunters. He's a level E hunter, but he's also known as the weakest hunter out of everyone. Like out of all the hunters, he's known as the weakest.
Okay.
And so story starts like was it a whole bunch of hunters gather for a mission. You're like, like they like talking to each other, like, hey, how you doing? How's the kids? How's family? It's like, yeah, yeah, they're all getting on. And then Sung Jin Woo turns up, and then they're obviously, yeah, as I said before, friendly, talking about whatever. But then they start talking like behind his back and say, oh, if he's here, it means it's going to be a really easy mission. And obviously he does feel down about it, but he's got his motivations to keep going as a hunter. Like even though he's the weakest, and everyone says, "Why don't you just quit?" He's like, he's got his motivations. He wants to do it for his mum, I believe.
Okay.
Like there's, I think she might be dead. I believe she's dead. Typical typical pro tag stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, um, but yeah, anyway, they go on to this mission and they go through it. Like a lot of the like other hunters find it quite easy. Obviously, Sung Jin Woo is kind of like getting beaten down. Luckily, he's got like a friend who's a B rank mage, but she doesn't do well on higher class missions. So they end up going on this mission, which is probably like around ED rank, and she's there helping Sung Jin Woo out. Like she's like healing his wounds and stuff. Like he always gets damaged from these sort of things. Like it's like sort of those low level
Yeah.
like slimes. He'd be damaged by slimes basically, and he'd take a hit from them. Um, but anyway, this mission carries on. They find this boss cave, and they go in and like, okay, cool, let's finish this up. They go in, like start doing their sort of thing, but it's actually what would probably be a S class boss,
Okay.
and no, obviously no one's prepared for it. I won't go too much into detail for anyone that does want to read it. So, but long story short, a lot of the hunter, the hunters that went on that mission get killed off. A lot of them do, and I think only 6 survive out of I think they took like about 30 or something. So, like this whole boss room basically wipes them out. The only one that ends up like, what was it? 5 of them escape, but the one that doesn't escape the boss room is Sung Jin Woo, but he passes the trial that is set in that boss room.
Okay.
So that's basically the setup for the story, and from that he gets powers, which basically that no one else can kind of see. So think Sword Art Online kind of
I
thing,
would.
like it's got like
I
a
was literally gonna say a lot of this sounds like early SAO.
yeah. Well, that's the thing. Kirito is actually like a good character. He was like known as like one of the strongest characters
Yeah, well,
in
because he was a beta
uh
tester, but it was
uh,
just when you were like, oh,
yeah.
a bunch of people went into a room for a
Yeah.
mission and they weren't
It
prepared. A
is
bunch of people
they literally
died, and
call
I
it
was like,
raids. It is raids. So it is literally it feels like SAO.
yeah,
But it feels like it shouldn't be if the whole setup of SAO is that it's in a game world, isn't it?
yeah,
But this feels like it's established within a game world, but it's not in a
it's
game
the real
world.
world.
It's the real world. But suddenly, when Sung Jin-woo comes back from this mission, he has like a game select screen basically that no one else can see.
I thought, see, when you said powers and, just based off of the title alone, I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, so there's got to be some sort of video game element to it, right?
Yes.
And that's probably it.
Yeah.
So that
Uh,
makes sense.
but it's a really good thing. Like it's one of those ones where it feels very. If you like SAO, you'll like solo leveling. That is like let's establish that quite quickly now. um, but yeah, basically after he comes back, he gets his thing and he gets a notification or like an email sort of thing, and like you get daily quests in mobile games, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, do this or whatever. Like, so he gets this quest. He's in hospital recovering from this fucking mission, and he gets one saying, oh, you have to do 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 whatever's like exercise stuff, and like you have to
And a
run 10
10
kilometers a day.
kilometer run
Literally, it
every
is a 10
single
kilometer run.
day.
Exactly that. It is literally that.
So
It's that
One Punch
whole
Man.
list. It's the One Punch Man training regime. And basically he said, "Oh, this is your daily quest. If you don't do this, you'll be penalized." And like Sung Ji Woo's looking at us, he's like, "Oh, I'm in hospital. I don't need to do this. I'll put it off." And then the timer expires. Day goes by, and he goes into the penalty mission where he has to survive against a giant poisonous centipede for 4 hours. So he's basically running away from this fucking centipede, and like that happens, and then he gets transported back to his hospital room. Nurse comes in, there's like there's fucking sand everywhere. And he's like, "Oh my god, what the fuck?" So he survives it, but basically it pushes him from the weakest person out of the Hunters Guild or whatever it is. So he ends up doing these missions daily, and he gets rewards from it. He gets like little like stamina boosts and stuff like that. So It kind of like goes that way a little bit. But that's like the little rundown as how far I've gotten it anyway from Solo Leveling.
Okay.
And I've really enjoyed it. I've actually really enjoyed this manhwa.
Well, I mean,
You
who
know,
wouldn't like One Punch Man SAO?
it is literally that, and it's I'm interested to see how far this goes as well because obviously he's gonna be doing these daily
I think it is
missions.
quite long.
I from what I saw from where I read it, it was 181 chapters.
That's fairly long though. Like
Yeah,
again,
it is like yeah, like when you look at like some of the series that go on, right? So it's probably been going on for a few years now. I believe it had an anime adaptation, but don't quote me on that.
I don't remember hearing about that, but it could have happened
Yeah.
because it's not unheard of. Like you said, Noblesse had one. God of High School had one, and God of High School was also a manhwa, I believe.
Yeah, did you watch God of High Scores or read it?
I didn't. I was also recommended that before. Somebody, I can't remember who. Someone told me it's something I would definitely like. Much like Solo Leveling was recommended to me because it's something I would probably like.
I think it was most likely me and Wildebeest, aka Sam. Yeah, I've watched God of High School, and it is very much your kind of series. You liked History's Strongest Disciple, didn't you?
Yeah.
Very much that vibe.
Okay.
Very much History's Strongest Disciple vibe. Not exactly the same story, obviously, but same sort of genre kind of thing. Uh, and I reckon, yeah, you'd really like God of High School. I didn't read it. I watched up to, I think it must have been episode 13 or something. I can't remember how many there were. I did really enjoy it though. I just dropped off it just because I think, like you with Breaker, I think I just end up watching other stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, God of High School is good, and but yeah, I'd recommend that completely as well. So technically, I've watched Manwha, haven't read it. And that, I think that was like the thing is, with God of High School is always pitched as a Crunchyroll original.
Yes.
That's the and that's what everyone was kind of going on about because I think it was one of the first Crunchyroll originals. It was that, and then I think it was Tower of God as well. I don't know what Tower of God is.
I think
I
that
haven't
is
researched
also a
into that at all.
manhwa of some sort.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because a lot of people have told me to watch that as well.
I've that's the one. That's the other one that's always on like those like on the old websites or whatever. Do you remember
Mm,
like seeing down that list like Tower of God used to be on there quite a lot?
yeah, I do remember that. Yeah. But again, series that have been recommended to me loads. I just haven't got round to it. Yeah, Tower God, God of High School. Apparently, all have God in it. But yeah, Solo Leveling. I would recommend it for anyone that's interested in SAO. Apparently, there is an animation of it, but I don't think it's like that
Huh.
was like 2019 by my quick Google search that came out a trailer announcement or something. But yeah, that is basically my experience of manhwa, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Solo Leveling's pacing compared to Peerless Dad, I feel the way they work it with the chapters is, I'd say it's better because
Okay.
I was literally hooked from chapter to chapter, wanting to see how like what goes on with Solo Leveling. I think it got to with Peerless Dad. I think I stopped after chapter 2. Solo Leveling, I wanted to keep going with that because the whole process of him gaining his power from his secret quest they did in that boss room, I like that took about 10 chapters, 9 chapters in itself.
Okay.
So that's basically the prologue of the story, and what technically would be like a first episode, like 2 episodes into an anime, basically. I reckon like you could even squeeze like what was it, that whole prologue sequence into one episode, like one 30-minute episode. So, but yeah, pacing, I love that. But I feel that's a manhwa thing in general though. Like it is literally just like yeah, space out this as much as possible.
Well, I guess because and this is just pure conjecture. I actually don't know.
Hmm.
I don't know how manhwa is usually published.
I think a lot of it is through webtoons, I
What
believe.
that's what I was gonna say because like Breaker is the only one I know that was actually like in a magazine of some sort.
Yeah.
But I think mostly a lot of the manhwas that I'm familiar with, or at least the ones I've
Mm-hmm.
seen a lot or heard a lot about, are normally
Yeah.
like that's someone's passion project. You know, like they just do this for the sake of doing it, like for the fun of it. Like they just want to put out their story and their characters.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's why sometimes the pacing is a little better because they're not really beholden to any editor or any magazine style or voice. They just can do
Yeah.
what they feel is appropriate for that chapter.
Yeah. Yeah. This isn't to say that all of it is via webtoon as well. Some of it is actually in print.
Yeah, again, we have no idea, but like a lot, I feel like a large majority that I know of is
Yeah.
self published.
Mm-hmm. And if anyone in the comments knows more about that sort of thing, just leave it down below. I'd be interested to hear that, like learn more about it. Like, please educate the cultured boys. That sounded really sarcastic. I'm sorry.
Yeah, apparently
um,
neither of us are very good at these kind of things.
but yeah, like anyone that is a Manwha pro, please, like, yeah, let us know it. Like, I'll be interested to hear more about it. But yeah, is there anything you have to say about Manwha, Nathan? Anything else?
um, Nothing really. Again, it's hard to say anything
Mm-hmm.
substantial when we've got so little experience. It's yeah. Any more recommendations? I guess if anyone has any they reckon we would like, or ones that they want us to talk about, leave it in a comment below. Like Pepe said, like educate us or help us get educated. You know, like, and we'll spread the word. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, no, well, that's the thing. Like, as someone that's always read manga, like when I come across something that I thought, oh, okay, I might read that. I always seen the fact that it's a manhwa has always slightly put me off because I'm so used to reading manga. I'm not nothing against that. I was never like, ooh, manhwa. I was just like, I don't know if this is my kind of thing, and like obviously, like it clearly is. Like, it's a story at the end of the day. It's good design, good art. And yeah, I vibe with it. I think it's very good. And as Nathan said, if there's anyone got any more recommendations, I'd be happy to hear them. Yeah. Uh, but nice one. Okay, if that is that the end of the episode? Is that the end of the episode, Nathan?
Yeah, it feels like the end. So
It feels like the end.
with that, thanks for listening, guys. Don't forget to like, favorite, subscribe, leave us a comment, and check us out on podcast platforms. We've got the links in the description, and we'll catch you next time. Bye, guys.
Bye.